The SS Eastland disaster stands as one of the most tragic, yet lesser-known maritime catastrophes in American history. On a seemingly ordinary summer morning in 1915, what began as a festive company outing for Western Electric employees in Chicago quickly devolved into an unimaginable horror. The passenger ship, known for its instability, capsized while still moored to its dock in the Chicago River, claiming the lives of 844 passengers and crew members. This calamity, occurring in just 20 feet of water and within feet of the shore, exposed critical flaws in early 20th century maritime safety regulations and ship design. The Eastland story serves as a stark reminder of how overlooked safety concerns and a series of unfortunate circumstances can lead to devastating consequences, forever altering the lives of hundreds of families and leaving an indelible mark on Chicago's history. For Maritime Mishaps, this is that story. The SS Eastland was a recreational vessel that served the Chicago area, offering day trips to nearby destinations. Constructed in 1902 by the Lakeshore Shipyards in St. Clair, Michigan, the ship was commissioned by Great Lakes Travel Company. The vessel received its moniker in the spring of 1903, just prior to its inaugural journey. Engineered for passenger transport, the Eastland boasted a weight of approximately 2,000 gross tons and an estimated water displacement of 2,600 tons. Its dimensions spanned 80 meters in length and roughly 12 meters in width. The ship's propulsion system consisted of a pair of advanced steam engines and 4 coal-powered boilers, enabling it to reach speeds of about 30 kilometers per hour. Initially, it could accommodate up to 2,750 travelers. During its first operational season, the Eastland experienced an unfortunate incident on July 27, 1903. The vessel accidentally struck a moored tugboat, the William T. Smith, near the River Street Bridge in Chicago. While the tugboat sank, the Eastland escaped with minimal damage. However, this was not the only challenge the ship faced early on. On August 14th of the same year, during a voyage from Chicago to Lake Haven, Michigan, 6 crew members responsible for fueling the ship's boiler refused to continue their duties after a dispute over their meal. The ship's commander, Captain Michael O'Brien, intervened and detained the men at gunpoint. The remaining crew managed to keep the vessel operational until it safely reached its destination. Upon arrival in Lake Haven, the 6 mutineers were apprehended, and shortly thereafter, a new captain was appointed. The Eastland also faced scrutiny regarding its performance. It failed to achieve its projected speed of 35 kilometers per hour and drew too much water for the shallow depths of the Pine River at Lake Haven, complicating passenger embarkation and disembarkation. These issues prompted the ship's return to St. Clair in September 1903 for enhancements. During this overhaul, a climate control system was installed, and modifications were made to boost power and reduce the ship's draft. However, these alterations had unintended consequences on the vessel's stability. Despite these adjustments, the Eastland resumed service in May of 1904 and emerged victorious in a race against the Lake Haven Express en route to Chicago. Nevertheless, concerns about the ship's stability lingered. On July 17, 1904, the vessel nearly overturned while departing Lake Haven with approximately 3,000 passengers on board. In response, authorities reduced the ship's passenger capacity to 2,800 and mandated structural modifications to enhance safety, including the removal of some cabin spaces and the addition of more lifeboats. Another alarming incident occurred on August 5, 1906, when the ship began to list dangerously once again, resulting in formal complaints against the new proprietors, Midwest Waterways Incorporated. In the following years, the Eastland changed ownership multiple times. In 1907, it was acquired by Erie Navigation Limited and relocated to Lake Erie. By 1909, it had come under the control of Eastland Cruises, operating trips between Toledo and Sandusky. Further alterations were made after the 1909 season, with nearly 40 cabins removed, and before the 1912 season, the ship's chimney was shortened. Despite these modifications, the vessel continued to experience difficulties, including a severe tilt of about 25 degrees while boarding passengers in Toledo on July 1, 1912. In June 1914, the Eastland was sold once more, this time to Michigan-Illinois Steamship Lines, and it returned to Lake Michigan, providing service between Benton Harbor, Michigan, and Chicago. Unfortunately for the ship and its crew, this would be the last major transaction involving the vessel before much darker waters appeared on the horizon. On a summer day in 1915, the MV Eastland, along 4 other passenger vessels, the Lincoln, North Star, Gulfstream, and Blue Water, was reserved for a company outing. Employees of the Midwestern Manufacturing Corporation's Riverside plant in Oak Park, Illinois, were to be transported across Lake Michigan to Silver Beach, Indiana, for a day of recreation. The Maritime Safety Act, enacted earlier that year following the oceanic disaster, mandated that ships like the Eastland be outfitted with a complete set of emergency vessels. While this legislation was intended to enhance safety, it inadvertently compromised the Eastland's equilibrium by adding weight to a vessel already known for its top-heavy design. Industry experts voiced concerns that numerous Great Lakes ships might face similar stability issues, but the administration pushed forward with the law anyway. Faced with either reducing passenger capacity or installing additional lifeboats, the Eastland's operators chose the latter to maintain their vessel's 2,570 person limit. However, the ship was already operating under restrictions due to its poor balance, and the extra weight only exacerbated its instability, just like the experts predicted. The previous year, under new management by the Midwest Maritime Company, the ship underwent modifications. Additional ballast was introduced to various sections of the vessel, increasing its mass by approximately 13,600 to 18,100 kilograms. Captain James Anderson was assigned to helm the Eastland. As dawn broke on July 24th, travelers began to embark on the ship docked along the western bank of the Metro River. By early morning, the Eastland had reached its maximum occupancy of 2,572 passengers, with many congregating on the upper deck. As the vessel started to tilt to the left, crew members attempted to correct its position by flooding the stabilization tanks, but their efforts proved futile. Within minutes, the Eastland lurched dramatically to port, capsizing and settling on the riverbed, which was only about 6 meters deep. Despite its proximity to land, with half of the ship remaining above water, the incident was devastating. Numerous passengers had already descended below deck, seeking shelter from the cool morning air, and found themselves trapped as water surged in. Some were fatally injured by falling objects, such as grand pianos and heavy furniture. The nearby vessel Kenosha attempted to assist in rescue efforts, but tragically, 844 passengers and 4 crew members perished in the disaster. A significant number of the victims were recent immigrants from various European countries, including the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Sweden, and Austria, with a particularly high toll among the Bohemian community from Oak Park. Of the 220 Czech Republic passengers aboard, none survived the catastrophe. Makeshift morgues were hastily established to identify the deceased, and by mid-afternoon, unclaimed bodies were transferred to the local militia headquarters for further processing. The Western Electric Company contributed a substantial sum of $100,000, approximately $3 million in today's currency, to support the bereaved families. Among those who fortuitously avoided boarding the Eastland was 20-year-old George Halas, who would later become a renowned sports mogul and owner of the legendary Chicago Bears of the National Football League. Halas arrived at the pier only after the vessel had overturned, having been delayed en route. Initial media reports erroneously listed Halas among the casualties, but he was subsequently confirmed alive. His acquaintance, Ralph Brizzolara, and Brizzolara's sibling, were passengers also, but managed to escape through small openings in the hull. Bystanders recounted the shocking sight of the enormous vessel capsizing without any apparent cause. Author Michael Blackwood, present at the scene, expressed his disbelief at witnessing the Eastland gradually tilt onto its side in placid waters, with no signs of fire or explosion. Another observer, reporter and verse writer Carl Sandburg, penned a scathing critique of inadequate safety protocols, attributing the catastrophe to society's disregard for blue-collar lives. In his composition, The Eastland, Sandburg juxtaposed the tragedy with the daily hardships of the underprivileged, remarking that he encountered numerous Eastlands during his daily commute. The incident prompted legal action, with a jury indicting the steamship company's CEO, 3 executives, and the vessel's captain and chief engineer for criminal negligence and involuntary manslaughter. The ship's instability was attributed to excessive passenger load, improper ballast management, and inherent design flaws. Sidney Jenks, president of the shipbuilding firm responsible for the Eastland, testified that the vessel was originally intended for cargo transport rather than mass passenger conveyance. He also acknowledged that no stability assessment had been performed following the ship's conversion to a passenger vessel. Despite these revelations, the court found insufficient evidence to prosecute the defendants, reasoning that the ship had been operated without incident for years and that the accused had acted without malicious intent. In the decades following the tragedy, the Eastland incident has endured as a sobering reminder of the consequences of overlooked safety measures and human error. The earliest known film footage documenting the recovery efforts was unearthed in 2015, and Marian Eichholz, the last known survivor, passed away in 2014 at the age of 102. Following its retrieval on August 14, 1915, the SS Eastland found a new purpose as a naval asset. Transformed into a gunboat, the vessel was christened USS Wilmette on February 20, 1918. Its official commissioning took place on September 20, 1918, under the leadership of Captain William B. Wells. Despite joining the fleet during the final stages of World War I, the Wilmette never engaged in combat. Instead, it served as an educational platform, instructing novice sailors while undergoing regular upkeep. The ship remained based in Chicago with a skeleton crew, and on July 9, 1919, entered a reserve status with minimal personnel for maintenance. By June 29, 1920, the vessel resumed full operational status. A notable mission in Wilmette's career occurred on June 7, 1921, when it was tasked with dispatching the UC-97, a German submarine ceded to the United States after World War I. The team responsible for this operation included gunner's mate J.O. Sabin, who had discharged the first American artillery round in the war, and gunner's mate A.F. Anderson, who had launched the inaugural U.S. torpedo during the conflict. Throughout its quarter-century of service, the Wilmette primarily functioned as an instructional vessel for naval reservists in the 9th, 10th, and 11th Naval Districts. It conducted regular training exercises, traversing the Great Lakes, and transporting recruits from the Naval Station Great Lakes. On February 15, 1940, Wilmette was classified as out of commission in service. Shortly thereafter, on February 17, 1941, it received the hull designation IX-29 and resumed its educational role by March 30, 1942. During this period, its mission focused on preparing armed guard units to defend merchant vessels against German U-boat threats in World War II. This responsibility continued until Germany's defeat in 1945, which diminished the need for such protective measures. 2 years prior, in August 1943, Wilmette had the distinction of conveying President Franklin D. Roosevelt and his inner circle, including Admiral William D. Leahy, James F. Burns, and Harry Hopkins, during a 10-day angling expedition in McGregor and Whitefish Bay. Wilmette briefly returned to full commission on April 9, 1945. However, following the conclusion of World War II, it was permanently decommissioned on November 28, 1945. The ship was struck from the Navy's inventory on December 19th, and by October 31, 1946, Wilmette was sold for salvage to the Hyman Michaels Company, with dismantling completed in 1947. In the decades following its decommissioning, the Eastland catastrophe remained etched in public consciousness. On June 4, 1989, a commemorative plaque was unveiled to honor the 1915 tragedy. Regrettably, this marker was pilfered on April 26, 2000, but a substitute was installed and dedicated July 24, 2003, precisely 88 years after the disaster. As of 2016, plans were underway for a permanent outdoor exhibition titled At the River's Edge. This display, intended for placement along the Chicago Riverwalk near the incident site, would feature informational panels with text and visuals, helping to preserve the historical record of the event. On July 12, 2015, an entire century after the catastrophe, a monument honoring the victims was dedicated at Bohemian National Cemetery in Chicago, ensuring that the memory of those lost in the Eastland disaster continues to be preserved.